Hello, my name's Nicole Hartley-Bradford. I'm the originator of the Sunshine Coast Climate Cafe and also of an evolution that happened into a new game world, a global game world called the Nomadic Gaias Climate Cafe. And this is a kind of cafe that is held space for by people who are studying and using possibility management for anybody who considers themselves a climate activist. And you can hear more about Climate Cafe in the context of Climate Cafe, as at least as done by the Nomadic Gaias. I will add some links in the show notes. The purpose of this video is to report what happened last week on Friday, November 15th at the Sunshine Coast Climate Cafe that happened at Straight Coffee in Wilson Creek. I came in with something that I had from earlier in the day in my communications with Ines, who is the apprentice and my teammate in developing the context, defining the context, noticing it really for the Nomadic Gaias Climate Cafe. She's based in Europe right now, and she had this amazing reflection that came with this question, where she could hear that I was talking about an old map of climate activism and a new map of climate activism. And I had so far been speaking in terms of certainly how I used to relate to climate activism and be a climate activist, and how I relate to now what I would say being an all-day, everyday climate activist, and having a lot more scope about what is climate activism and how do I source the activism, the actions, the choice about my actions as someone who is an all-day, everyday climate activist. And so I had sent something to Ines about it, kind of a rough draft of these two maps, and then I brought it to the team. But we didn't start with that in the in-person team. We started with saying hello. We started with, what have you brought? One person had brought some seeds, like 2 big containers just full of seeds that she's willing to let anyone take. And I love this generosity, because I think generosity is one of the bright principles of the Nomadic Gaias Climate Cafe. And then another person had brought all kinds of enthusiasm about what their own research about how to create the consequences they want in their lives, rather than the consequences that they see happening in their own behavior and in the behavior of others, especially when it comes to trying to control how things go. And wow, this relates very directly to a video that I saw this morning from Anne-Chloé Destremaux, who is the originator of the Woman of Earth game world, and who has been sending reports daily from the Woman of Earth tour that's happening in Europe right now. I will also include that in the show notes, or a link to it. So this Climate Cafe on Friday was, I would say, a little more heavy. There was a little more sadness happening in the space, I think. Maybe unconscious sadness being used to, and it gave this gravity to the space, which I loved. I also love when there's a lot of enthusiasm in a Climate Cafe space, which has been the case in the previous, I think, 4 Climate Cafes that have happened on the Sunshine Coast. I wrote some notes. I have this paper out where I wrote out this old map of climate activism and new map of climate activism as a spectrum. And then there was this question about, down the middle, about what does it take to orient toward the new map of climate activism, away from blaming, pointing fingers, using anger, sadness, fear, and joy unconsciously to perpetuate this low drama of victim, which, like, especially when it comes to the earth being a victim and everyone on earth being a victim of the assholes on earth who are, making it how it is, and then turning us into unconscious rescuers where we have to do all this stuff. And then it brings in this gremlin joy of superiority and inferiority and comparison and judgment and resentment and mixing feelings and becoming overwhelmed and judgmental. And yes, and then, so what tips and hints did people have about making that shift? One of them was to take a step back and to observe and notice others as people, as human beings, distinct from seeing them as opponents, and to find common ground with people, and to stop labeling, like stop making these declarations about what somebody is or is not, and to practice presence. I love that somebody mentioned this quote from Einstein, that insanity is doing the same thing as you've been doing and expecting different results. And I certainly, this saying comes to mind often for me as I study possibility management and use it and experiment in order to get the results I want, rather than the results that I kept getting that I didn't want to get anymore. Also brought into this space were these four beautiful questions, or these four statements that it becomes possible to use consciously and responsibly to say, I don't know, I was wrong, I am sorry, I need help. And also it was brought into this space the possibility of completing incomplete emotions. One of the participants was sharing about how much they had in them, about how things were going in a certain game world that they're part of, and how they were really trying not to do this accusing and judging and blaming, while they saw another person, in this control mode, trying to make it go how they thought it should go. And I recommended that this person try out completing incomplete emotions, which there is a dojo every week where anyone can join to do that. And also I'm available to hold space for anyone who wants to come into a space where they have time and space where they could feel and not just think about their feelings, but feel their feelings, the anger, sadness, fear, and joy, and speak and have someone complete the communication. The distinction being that a communication persists until it's completed and by another consciousness. So something like, for examples from my own life, I've had times where I have this anger and I say something like ask for a held space, and in this space with this agreement that what the person listening and holding the space with me is going to do is they're going to complete my incomplete emotions and communications. And so I say something like I hate that I don't see my daughters more often. And they'd say, you hate that you don't see your daughters more often. I'd be like, yes. And this is the energetic kind of shift that happens, is that the person who has now completed the incomplete communication can go to the next level. And sometimes there might be layers of communications that have been completed, but eventually you get to the layers that haven't been completed. And it can become very loud and messy, and you need to bring tissues and a towel and a barf bucket just in case, maybe to spit in, maybe not to barf in, water, note-taking utensils, so that you can really get the gold from this space. It's not just about venting. It's about really learning and being in discovery about what's really going on inside of you. What else came from the space? Yes, this distinction between pity and compassion. And 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 I notice how pity can be this superiority thing, looking down on someone rather than looking across at them and having compassion for them. Also, attachment and love. So attachment is like, yeah, this trying to control somebody or trying to be with them in a way that is somehow limiting them, as distinct from a space of love, where love is happening and not attachment and control. Also, the distinction between indifference and equanimity, where in indifference, there's like this, I don't care. And in equanimity is like, okay, this is how it is for you. This is how it is for me. This is what I want. This is what you want. It's not about, I don't care, or I think you're stupid to care. It's about something else. This is my report from the, the Climate Cafe on Friday, November 15th at Straight Coffee in Wilson Creek. I will add to these show notes a link for you to check out more about, well, really to join the invitation list for the Sunshine Coast Climate Cafe. And also, yeah, to discover more if you want to about the Nomadic Gaias Climate Cafe, and especially the training that's available. Something like how to host a Nomadic Gaias Climate Cafe using distinctions from possibility management. And I'm starting to, again, with Inés's help, to discern what the prerequisites would be for apprentices to the space holding to become full-fledged space holders of Nomadic Gaia Climate Cafe. And also, while a person does not have those prerequisites, to experiment with holding space for Climate Cafe as an apprentice to Nomadic Gaia's Climate Cafe, and to be coached and get feedback about how it goes. So I anticipate that soon there will be a team of people who are experimenting about holding space for Climate Cafe in using the distinctions and maps of possibility management, and not waiting till you have that before you experiment, because experimenting is so valuable for learning. Reach out anytime. Goodbye for now.